Okay, so it's so great to join everyone today. As Nancy said, my name is Vicki Swan, and it's a true pleasure to have the opportunity to really ride on the coattails of Nancy, because what I get to do today is just kind of refocus us on some of the learning that we've had today, and then also provide some opportunities for us to connect to our learning and then make some commitments so that all of this great work over the last 10 or so months doesn't fall by the wayside as we shift into, for most of us, shift into our summer roles of reading non-educational books and hopefully enjoying some sunshine somewhere. So I thought I first would start with this quote, and this it's really my why, like why I'm here today and why women in leadership and supporting mentoring and sponsoring and coaching through the lens of women in leadership is so important. And as a child, this was my beach towel that my mom bought us. My sister and I had towels that said, never underestimate the power of a woman. And it had this little cheeky chick with like, this great attitude. And it was just what we grew up listening to. It was us saying, we can do whatever we want. Our mom saying, you just put your mind to it. I've got your back. And that really has driven me throughout my life. And when she wrote yesterday and was like, I'm so proud of you. Good luck tomorrow. That was the highlight of my day. So love you, Mom. But also it's just such I think it really echoes the importance of us being mentors, coaches, and sponsors, especially in the role of women in leadership. So moving on today, as I was saying, we're going to look at 3 areas. And again, just focusing on some of the learning that has happened over the last, I think, 10 or so months. Also, again, connecting to what our key takeaways are and what has really resonated with us. And then finally, again, committing to what we can do as we move forward. So focus session. There were 3 sessions. It was the power of mentorship, creating opportunities to lift others was the theme of the second session. And then third, really looking at how schools can create cultures that have greater impacts throughout our given situations and scenarios. So what I was hoping to do, again, this is a recap because I recognize that not everyone may have been able to experience firsthand each session. So this may be like, oh my gosh, that's so much information, but we will do a breakout room and have opportunities to process a little bit more. So bear with me as I talk a little bit through and reflect on some of the previous sessions. So session 1 was the power of mentorship. And this is one of the highlight slides from that session. And it's where Nancy began defining, like, what are these roles? What do they actually mean? And in a nutshell, when we're thinking about these 3 areas, a mentor is someone who is a guide. It's someone giving you advice. A coach is just like an athletic or sports coach. It's someone who's helping you really hone in on your skills and develop those techniques or strategies to do a job or a role. And then sponsorship is more about receiving an endorsement. The second session was more about creating opportunities to lift each other up. And it really resonated in that session having, there were images of strong women in leadership and the steps and their stories. And this is where Nancy was also bringing in some of those stories and how can we connect to other stories and then relate them to our own given situations. And I'm a strong believer that stories go a long way and can carry us very far as well. Clearly, as I was sharing a story from, being 6 or 7. So during this session, it really was saying, how can we ensure that there's equity around the table? What are explicit steps that we can take to ensure that women are being heard? So I will give you a moment to read through these. But as you're reading through, so 1, making sure our ideas are heard, promoting a network, being conscious of our biases, and then being a mentor, coach, or sponsor. Take a moment and put which one of these do you feel resonates the most with you at this time? Which one have you either experienced or which one have you had clearly given to you in a moment of leadership or in your profession or personal life? And as you're doing that, what I'd love to share, and I reached out to Jennifer Abrams, and she's a beautiful author and wonderful human being. And she recently shared a story on Facebook about how, and I'm quoting, but she said she was mansplained as a panelist from another panelist. And she said, young in her career, it really had a negative impact. She was like, wow, you know, that imposter syndrome started creeping in. But afterwards, luckily, there was another person that came up and said, and it was a man came up and said, that was not okay, and that cannot continue happening. And she was just reiterating the importance of us standing up for each other and ensuring that there is opportunities for all of us to be heard. And when we see these injustices happening, then we need to stand up and rally with each other and make sure that we are providing those platforms. So again, I thought that was a really powerful story that she was sharing. Let's see. Another part was, again, there was, Nancy was sharing, shifting the conversation about the different ways that we can ensure that there's equity and voice and opportunities. And she started talking a little bit more. There were more conversations around being a mentor, a sponsor, and a coach. And what I'd like to do for a moment is stop sharing. And if you are willing, keep your cameras on or not, but I would like you to use a reaction. If what I'm about to ask you, if it applies to you, either you have done it personally or you have assisted someone else, if you would either give a thumbs up or a heart or some sort of reaction to let us know that you resonate with the statement. So I'm curious of how many of you have been mentored? Formally or informally. I've got some hands up, I've got some emojis. I'm going to put a heart for that one because my mentors they deserve hearts. I love them for all the patience they've had with me. Okay, how many of you have mentored someone else? Again, formally or informally. You can give a thumbs up or raise a hand. There's already some reactions up. What about coaching? Again, who is that person that's really honing in and supporting someone through the role of coach? I better put something up for this recording, considering right now I'm an instructional coach. I better say, yes, I've coached someone. And then last but not least, what about a sponsorship? Have you sponsored someone or has someone sponsored you? Oh, I see the big hearts. That's good, Yasmin. I bet they may be in this room as well. I think we all have some sponsors in this space. So I'll go back to the presentation really quickly. And thank you for that. I am happy that there were so many folks that were able to raise their hand, give a thumbs up, or share a heart reaction. Really what resonated with me in this particular session was the importance of sponsorship, especially as a woman in leadership. There is research and there's studies that says we may not have the network, as wide of a network as other folks. So even if we are sponsoring someone, and I encourage you to, again, informally or formally, it's also okay, and this is where I've grown the most this year, it's okay to reach out to someone and say, I need a sponsor. This is what I'm working toward. This is what I'm looking forward to doing. Can you help me? And Nancy, I think this is a great example of, hey, I need someone to do this. And I'm like, hey, I want to do it. It can be big, it can be small, it can be public or not, but it really is just advocating for ourselves and also advocating for each other. And then the last one, the third one, and apologies, when I get nervous, I speak really fast. So I know I'm going 90 to nothing. So I'm going to take a breath and go to the third session. So the last one, or the last session, was about, again, those big impacts. We had really spent some time focusing on understanding what these terms mean, looking at how they apply individually to us. But I really love this last session because it looked at what is the greater impact? How can we use our roles, or how can we use our positions or our voice and really create a culture of mentorship? So we were looking at these 4 areas and some highlights that were, there was a much more detailed slide that was shared where it gave you examples of what each of these looked like. And again, it was super powerful. But really quickly, in summary, the define part was about, again, knowing what is the role of a mentor and mentee. Again, clarity is key when we were looking at these. We spoke about resources, and again, the importance of not just saying, we have a mentor program, but actually providing the time, the space, the budget, the materials, And then the communication and feedback piece, where we're soliciting and offering feedback so that we can continue to grow and develop mentorship programs and opportunities within our communities and cultures. And then last, but certainly not least, is the importance of celebrating the successes and also really honing in on the value of those programs so that they continue to gain momentum within your communities. And then this one, I feel like I shouldn't even be the one to say the title of this because Nancy had such flair when she was saying it. So Nancy, I need you to unmute and say the title of this slide.
What scares me is a Brooklyn girl is now saying something in French. So we say the mentoring maison. Maison.
I love it. I still recall like how excited and the flair she had when she was talking about this. But it was, again, this was a really impactful, beyond her flair, it was also really impactful to look at the different ways that we can support folks through mentoring, whether it be peer or it's group or the 5 different ones or a collection of those. And there were some really powerful breakout rooms as part of that. So thank you again for sharing those. So again, lots of wonderful stuff going on. And I know I'm speed talking through this, but I think the power of these conversations and the power of these sessions is for us to have opportunities to really pause and reflect and have some rich dialogues in breakout rooms. So at this time, what I'd like to do is we'll give you a couple of instructions, but I'd like for us to take an opportunity to, again, just reflect on our learning. And if you weren't here, don't worry. If you weren't here for all of them, it's fine. I think we can all have conversations around mentorship, sponsoring, and coaching. So what I would hope for is we would just have an open discussion. We'll have a timekeeper, really important because we have a very tight timeline today. So we'll take about 10 minutes and just look at these prompts. What learning has excited you? What do you feel has had the greatest impact? And what are you still curious about? So at that time, Nancy, if it's okay, let's break folks up maybe in groups of 3 to 4 so that everyone has opportunities to talk. And please, once you go into your session, if you will elect a timekeeper. My husband, James, he's in here. He's always like, no, you need to assign so we don't waste time selecting someone. So either select yourself, or if you want, the person with the shortest hair gets to be the timekeeper. Your choice. All right, let's have some conversations.
That doesn't matter before.
Before we continue, I do want to mention one person that at the start of this session, I mentioned Pauline was here as part of as a member of this committee, but also another committee member is here. And I want to give a big shout out to Proserpina. Honey, can you unmute and say hello to everybody?
Sanbonani, that's hello in my language. Hi, everyone.
Yay, hello, so good. And as I showed you in the beginning of this session, Proserpina did a session on advice to your younger self. So just a big hug to you, honey. Thank you for being here.
She's the best.
She is the best. Vicky, it's now to you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I would encourage you, as Nancy said at the beginning, if there is a new connection that you've been able to make, I love the network that I've been able to grow and develop through these sessions. So I encourage you to reach out, say thank you. Veronica, I saw you've already done that. Always so polite. Please put a thank you to the folks that were in your team. Also share those LinkedIn connections or Twitter handles, or I'm not cool enough to know what they're supposed to be called, but be sure to share those with everyone. And also I would encourage you to take a moment just to kind of wrap up some of the thinking that happened. If there were 4 or 5 words that would summarize your takeaway from that conversation, what would those 4 or 5 words be? So go ahead and place a phrase in the chat, as well as a thank you to those folks that you were having conversations with, and I will attempt to reshare my screen. Here we go. Perfect. Yeah, so what excited? What's the greatest impact? What are you still curious about? So as you're doing that, I'll go ahead and transition. Thank you so much for bearing with me during the first part. That is the most that you will hear me speak, but I really did want to summarize some of the beautiful work that had happened before this day of celebration and reflection. But at this point, I had shared that we wanted to focus, so we've refocused around the work and around our learning, and now that important piece of making connections. Now that we've learned these things, we've had exposure to it, how does it connect to our practice? How does it connect to who we are as leaders, aspiring leaders, as sponsors, coaches, mentors, whatever it may be? So when I was thinking about this, the connection piece, the question that was resonating was, how are we integrating the learning into practice? So it's always that piece of like, how do we bring it to life? How do we make a greater impact with our learning? And there were three words that came to mind, and it's a little cheesy, but the three E's. And it was inquire, elevate, and embrace. And through these inquire, I was thinking more of like, what are the skills? What are the tools that I inquire during the learning? And then the elevate, again, that message that has resonated, the thread that's gone through each of these sessions is how are we lifting each other up? And then the embrace piece was how are we really embracing this and in creating time and space? So if you can bear with me, I would love to share just a personal story or some of my personal takeaways specific to each of these areas. And the inquire piece, the toolbox is this series. I've loved having the opportunity to learn from others, to learn from Nancy and as she presents to us and shares her knowledge, but also again, those breakout rooms where we're getting to connect and process this learning. So I love this series. Another piece where there's been inquiry around how we're lifting others up and how we're really taking in those mentorship roles. I would feel guilty if I didn't give a huge shout out to James and Jessica, James Duval and Jessica Delgado. I wanted to make sure I said her last name correctly, but they are the sponsors for the ECIS DIJ cohort, and the learning that has taken place and the experiences they provided us really has helped me shape my toolbox and develop my skills that can help me with supporting women in leadership. And elevate, I was really thinking of sometimes I feel we can be guilty of wanting it to be like the big thing. It has to be like, oh my gosh. But I think those little encounters, those small acts of sponsorship or mentoring can have a really powerful thing as well, a powerful impact as well. So for Elevate, what was resonating or what I was reflecting on was I had this lovely opportunity to support the Amala School. And if you're not familiar, Amala is it is the first accredited high school for refugees. And they currently, they have a few sites, but I'm currently working with the leadership teams in their Jordan and Kenya site. And I have to say, it's some of the most heartwarming, wonderful work that I think I've experienced this year, and just having opportunities to really coach them through leadership and really talk about where they are in their practice. But more importantly, our conversations have always fed back to what is the impact that that's having on the students and learning. So again, just being really cognizant or reflecting on how we've been able or just stories around elevation. And then last, but certainly not least, the embrace piece is just, again, how are we embracing creating that time and space? And that can be mentoring new to the profession teachers or new as international educators. You may have other folks that are new to international ed. But again, something in speaking with someone yesterday, what was so great was they said, I'm your cheerleader. I'm so happy to share about you and celebrate you. And I thought, well, that is someone really modeling the importance of embracing this work and really making an effort to lift each other up. So I promised that the first part was where I would do the most talking. So for this one, the connect piece, I want us to have more time. We're going to have smaller groups and we're going to transition to a breakout room very shortly. And what I'm hoping to do is to provide everyone an opportunity to, my stories are my stories, but it's so powerful to share and celebrate each other's. So what I'd like for us to do is, here are the prompts for this, and we're going to do something that I'm calling echoes of impact. I made this up, but what I'd like for folks to do is, once you get into your breakout room, definitely assign a timekeeper and a recorder. And I would like folks to share stories under these three areas. So maybe share strategies or steps that you've taken to build your own mentorship toolbox, or share a way that you've helped colleagues or that you've provided the space and time for folks. As part of this, though, because I think it's really important, we can't hear all of the stories. We don't have the time, unfortunately, to have everyone come back and share. So what I'd like for folks to do is, when you're in the breakout room, one person will share for 1 minute, and I need my timekeepers, like, hold them to that 1 minute as closely as possible, but share from one of the prompts or one of your stories for 1 minute. And as you're listening to that person share, take note of 2 or 3 words that really resonates with you as they're speaking. At the end, after everyone shares their story and you talk about like what resonated, and we want you to share those after each person, then I would love for the group to come up with their own echo of impact. What is a phrase or what is a sentiment that was echoed throughout the folks that are in your breakout room? And then create a statement or a mantra or something that we can capture and hold on to as we move into our summer. So an example may be, together we learn, we uplift, and we impact others. So that's a horrible example. I'm expecting y'all to do so much better than I did for this one. But again, share your story as people are sharing, see what resonates, jot down a couple of words, share those after the person shares their story, and then see where there's a collective or a common echo of the impact that's been made throughout this year. When we come back, again, we won't be able to share as a whole group, but I do want you to record those in the chat. So please assign a timekeeper and then assign someone to be the recorder so that we don't lose all of that great conversation that's happening in your breakout sessions. Nancy, have I forgotten anything on that?
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, if our recorders, thank you, join again, say thank you because you were in new groups. Be sure to exchange contacts and say thanks to your folks, but also I can't wait to read some of your echoes of impact or ecos. I guess it depends your region. So go ahead and give us the recorder for each group. Go ahead and share what your echoes of impact is. I am anxiously waiting to see those, and I'll start sharing again. And maybe Nancy, if you see a couple, okay, listen, empower, transform. If you see a few and want to share, feel free, Nancy, to
Will do.
sing some praises of our folks.
Let's see. I just love that we have so inspired by that breakout. What a beautiful thing to say. To be able to get such inspiration in that 10 minutes. Precious, thank you for sharing that. Very kind of you. Pauline wrote the listen, empower, and transform. So let's get these. I don't know if it's echoes or is it echoes? It's echoes, isn't it?
I grew up saying echoes, but
I said, same with me. I said echoes. So keep on adding it to the chat, please. Thank you so much.
Okay, wonderful. And while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and, because I'm very cognizant of the time, and there are 3 sections. So we started the just refocusing, really honing in on some of the learning that has taken place. This session was on connecting to our learning. And I can't wait to continue reading some of the echoes of impact that you're sharing. And last but not least is that commitment piece. We've all heard like, oh, if you don't do something with your learning or with your conversations, it can have a tendency to fall by the wayside. And we certainly do not want that to happen. So as part of, I believe, the first session, there was a prompt. First, I have to, again, I'm going to give another shout out to James Duvall and Jessica Delgado about, as part of the DIJ group. And I think we have at least 2 of the incoming instructors with us as well, Michael and Yasmin. So excited for them to be joining this group. But they use this term clopen, and we're like, oh my God, what is this? And it was James. And if you've met him, he's just a lovely soul, and it made us laugh. And we're like, okay, so this is not in service like the stuff you do to teachers at the beginning of school. It's like in restaurant service or in a service profession. So there is intentionally not a hyphen between those two. But in service, there's a closing shift that's followed by a really early opening shift. And he coined this term clopen. And he said it's basically in education, it's being mindful of reflections and learnings from what that has happened, but then using that to transfer it and have an impact as you return or start the next shift, or for us, the next school year. So I was hoping to use this as well as we look at the commit aspect of this discussion. So now this was a Mentimeter that was given or created by participants, I believe, in the first session. And the prompt was, what are the characteristics of an effective mentor? And this is what folks thought: human touch, trustworthy, empathetic, honest, straight talker, positive energy, confidential, and humble. And you can read some of the others. We'll leave this up on the screen for just a moment. But what I'd like to do is give everyone a moment. When you revisiting that same prompt that we started with at the beginning of these sessions, and then bringing it back to our work today, what do you continue to feel are the characteristics of an effective mentor? But more importantly, what is one of these? If you are going to move forward through the lens of mentorship, which of these really resonates with you? And if there's one that resonates that isn't listed, that's okay as well. And we're going to give you a few seconds to just take a look at this list and ask yourself, which of these most resonates with you, and which one are you willing to commit to doing as we move forward? So I'm going to be quiet, and I'll give you a few seconds to pick a word or create your own. Hopefully you've had a moment. That was hard. It's so hard to be quiet. It's dead, that space. However, maybe what I should commit to is to embrace silence. That's what I'll do in my role as a mentor, a coach, or a sponsor. So what I would like to do, hopefully you've selected a word. I'm going to move to the next. I want you to hold this in your mind. I commit to, and then think about that word, and I'm going to stop sharing. And what I'd like for us to do, if you're willing and you're able, I would invite everyone to take a moment and either slide back and give yourself space, give yourself big space, or if you want to, you can shift your camera and you can stand up. And I want you to really feel I want to ask you in just a moment to say, I will commit to whatever your word is. But I can say, I commit to embracing silence. That's not, no. We're powerful people here. So I want you to, from your guts, I want you to breathe in and get ready. Stand up if you want to or need to. I got Nancy doing it. She's got so much space. I see it. Make sure you're not going to conk anyone out. But I do want the person next door, wherever your space is, I want them to hear you when we do this. So on the count of 3, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And I want everyone to say, I commit to.
Make sure you unmute everybody. Unmute everybody. Unmute.
Stand up if you're willing, able, want to, or at least make some space wherever it may be. I know I'm looking crazy now. It's all right. I'm going to feel this. I'm going to love it and embracing it for our final session with all this beautiful learning that's been taking place. I'm going to go 1, 2. Oh, I'm loving this. Dancing. There's some stretching going on. We're getting ready. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 and say, I commit to blank. Are we good? Can you stand? Okay. 1, 2, 3. I commit
to
empowering
trustworthy,
and
because no judgment talks.
Okay, that was a good warm-up. I say we do it again. One more time because I want everyone to hear you. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
I commit
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for playing along. And I hope that you've valued this time. I know it's a crazy time of year for us, and I appreciate you showing up for playing, laughing, for learning, for reflecting. And it just means the world to have this opportunity. So thank you, Nancy. It means a ton. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.